Hello there, it is Rebekah R. Jones, and you are in another video for the Illustrating Bible. This is a beautiful new Bible on the market, and I have been asking all of you on social media about these pen samples. I tested 86 pens, and now we're looking at color products, and I've got another download for you if you want to do the title for this page. I'm calling it color swatches. You can get that by looking below, and I'm going to speed things up now so that you can see this. Of course, you don't need to use a light box to get through here, but I am using studio lights and it's much easier to see in my lighting. I went ahead and got myself some boxes that were 5 across and roughly the same size, and I did not put this in a download because you just can't print paper this dimension, but I went ahead and did this and got this all set up, and you'll see along the way I start naming my boxes. And you know, I suppose I could just throw some swatches on there, but I really wanted this to work for me in the long haul and be a fun little tidy area in the back of my Bible. So I'll leave some spaces for extra products as they become available, and all of the products that you have asked about. So first of all, colored pencil. Now I've got 2 different colored pencil here, both from Prismacolor. One is the Prismacolor Premier, which I'll do on the left, and those are super buttery and creamy. So if you've got a really soft type of colored pencil, it would be like this. I've started out real thin and I've gotten darker as I've gone, and then I'm using my colorless blender to blend in the color at the bottom. And then I'm going in with the Verithin, which is what you would outline project with. It's very, very sharp, and you can get a nice point with those. And so those are a bit different. And like in my other video, stick around to the end so you can see what it looks like in the back. Now, keep in mind that this Bible has 75% thicker paper. So if you have a different journaling Bible, this is not going to be quite the same. I'm making myself a little stencil here with some very thick paper the size of my needed box, and that way I can go in and use it for things like that ink spray and not spray everywhere, just in my box. And then I'm just naming everything that I plan on putting in there. So like I said, keep in mind that this paper is thicker, and I'm going to put this behind there and then get myself some little swatches of paper to put behind in case I want to see how much bleed through or if there is any bleed through. And I'm going in with Gelato's dry on the left and then wet on the right. And you know, I think that it can be easy to think that all Bible paper is the same, and it is, except for this is just a bit thicker, and so that will have an impact. But I think it's really important to know that all paper is created a little bit different than the next deliberately. And you can see that while that is actually wet, it is looking like it's going to bleed through because it's dampening the paper all the way through. And this is something that I talk about in my page prep course in a lot better thoroughness, and there is so many variations of all of this inside of the page prep course, specifically with all the products for traditional Bibles. And I'm showing you this snippet for you know, very rushed of course, for the Illustrating Bible, so that you can understand if it's a good fit for you personally. But if you really want some in-depth training, I definitely recommend the page prep course. Of course, it's very focused on spiritual stuff as usual with my stuff, but there's a lot of practical stuff in there as well. I love these Inktense blocks. It's a form of ink that means that's permanent when it goes down, and then the pencil version of that you can see when you draw it on versus just coloring it on from the tip. And you can see the vibrance of those Inktense blocks is just a little bit more. But you can see it's looking like it's bleeding through, but wait until the end when it all dries. That's the difference, and that's really helpful. Here's the Prima Marketing watercolor pencil. Of course, if you have a different brand of watercolor pencil, it's just watercolor pencil, so it's going to act the same. And so is the same with a different color of Distress Crayon or Gelato's or colored pencil. These are a good representation of products that you can use in your Bible and how they might act. So I'm going to use the Kuretake Gonzai Tombi here, and that is actually a product that is just a watercolor. So if you have a different watercolor, great. You can see I'm testing dark and light, and that's because there's a significant difference in shadowing when it comes to how it looks on the backside. Those darker colors really show through in comparison to your lighter colors. So if that really bothers you, then try using lighter colors. And now I'm going to use this spray, and I'm just doing a normal spray like I would anything else and giving it a chance to dry for a second, and then I'm taking this off, and you can see it's even tried to bleed into another area, but look at that. Isn't that horrendous? So just for you, I've shown you what happens when you use ink sprays on a non-page prepped surface, and this is with 75% thicker paper. So yes, you need to page prep if you're using ink sprays in your Bible. End of story. It's too much liquid on the surface there. And here I'm using some acrylic paint, both with a brush or with a card, and then with some lighter color. So that was Liquitex Pro at the top and then Dana Wakley on the bottom. And really, those are the only two brands that I recommend to use inside of a Bible, because it's going to dry with a really matte finish, which you really need in Bibles. And here I'm going to stamp with Distress ink. This is actually a blendable ink. It's not really meant for stamping. And I was a little disappointed with how the lighting showed up this, because it did actually bleed through quite considerably, but it just doesn't show on camera. And I think it's because it's light. Now this is my little scrubber pad, and you just spray the spray on there and then wipe it on, and it just comes through all clean for your next use. And I'll put the products that I'm using there'll be a link in the description box. I've got a blog post with all of these products linked, so you can see what I'm using. Now, I've decided, because archival ink is I've done a huge look at all of the different types of inks in my page prep course and how they react in Bible pages and all of that. So archival ink is definitely the best, and I will in the future, if you guys want, talk a little bit about my favorite ways to stamp in the Bible. But I am testing the archival ink because it is the best for use in Bibles, and I'm using this kind of light, medium, and black colors to give an indication. That's a stamp that I made, that little heart, and the other one is discontinued, so apologies for that, but it's just for a sample of what it looks like with some little outline and some dark lines, and so we can get an idea of what it looks like on the back end of things. And then I'll be back to the Distress ink where I stamped it before, and now I'm using it how it normally is. I'll see how it's dark in one area. I'm pouncing it further heavier on that top right, and you can see that that's where it bleeds through. But if you're just barely brushing the surface and you've pounced it off onto another surface, you're good. This is a fast video. It's a lot of information. I do cover all of this in great detail in my page prep course. Ask any of my students. I'm putting some UT on here. I should have used some superfine embossing powder, but it's the concept here is that I wanted to use some clear embossing powder on a clear surface of this watermark stamp pad, so that we can get an idea of what it looks like on the back end if you're using any embossing powder at all, and if there's a heavy shadow, what that looks like. So let's have a look at the back end of this. If you want to learn about any particular products, and tell me in the comments before. I love to hear about this. Now you can see that all those watercolors, they have some shadowing, but all of it is fine because I'm not heavy-handed. It's all about technique, but that spray is horrendous. And of course, stamping, that ink just goes straight through. The watercolor was a little bit heavy-handed in one area, so it kind of showed through. The Distress ink blending shows through. There is a need for page prep still, and it's certainly going to be okay in certain cases and not in others. And I almost forgot the alcohol ink, so I'll do that for you. Come hang out in the comments and talk to me about your favorite products. It's all about technique in my mind, and using the right products. And I'm happy to discuss things with you, and I look forward to seeing you in the comments. You are so loved. I'll talk to you soon.